All right, everybody, I'd like to introduce our next presentation here at the Planet MicroCap Showcase Vancouver. Up next is Chris Dobbin from Nova Leap Health. Chris, take it away.
Thanks very much. I got the applause before I even started. That's pretty good. Thanks very much for coming. I'm out of the Halifax area, so it's nice to travel to the West Coast here. I'll give you a brief story about Nova Leap Health Corp. So I founded this company back in 2016. It's traded on the Venture Exchange, NLH, not to be confused with NHL, is their ticker symbol. This is a home care business, so we've been rolling up home care companies in the U.S. and in Canada. Basically, we started the company back in 2016, had $40,000 of revenue, and in Canadian dollars, we were north of 35 million last year. So quite a bit of growth over the last few years. In terms of how I founded the company, quick story. So I didn't know about home care years ago. My father-in-law came down with Parkinson's, so a form of dementia. The latter years of his life, my mother-in-law had home care for him. So it was really our family's first experience with home care. And, wonderful people that came in to provide the care. And that's really where we learned about the industry. And, our experience was really, really good. Great people providing care. The only thing that we noticed was that there's a lack of training around dementia. And so our focus over the last few years has been rolling up home care companies with very much with a focus on dementia. So what is home care and what do we do? There's generally two types of care that people think of. Home care, which is the non-medical side. So think dementia care, like it could be light housekeeping, medication reminders, physician visits, activities of daily living, like helping people with mobility issues or personal grooming, taking them to the shower, bathroom, things like that. And then there's what's considered to be skilled care, which is more on the medical side. So think RNs or LPNs providing care within a home, could be a med port, G-tube. I mean, anything that's sort of medical related, usually done under the provision of or care of a physician, or again, like an RN or so on. So we provide both. Okay, we provide both the home care and on the skilled side. I'd say about 95% of our business is on the non-medical side. Okay. How do we get compensated? So we're in what's called the private pay industry. So generally speaking, it's out of pocket by the seniors we provide service to in their home or by their adult children. Okay? And their adult children are generally the ones that are approaching us when they're home at a Thanksgiving or a holiday season, and they kind of notice that there's something maybe a little bit off with mom or dad. In the U.S., for anyone up here from the U.S., you'd be familiar with Medicare or Medicaid. We're not really in that space. Again, we're primarily private pay, veteran affairs, or long-term care insurance. So those are the three types of payers that we would have. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this chart. I think everybody understands that we have an aging demographic, right? Basically any country that was impacted by World War II, baby boomers came back, made babies. There we are, right? Aging demographic, pretty easy to understand. Now, why is it important for home care industry? Because once someone attains the age of 65, they have a high likelihood that they have at least one chronic or long-term condition. And it's those long-term or chronic conditions that are leading to the need for care within the home. Where are we located? So as I said, I'm based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. That's where our head office is. We have offices in Nova Scotia, and we operate right now in 10 states across the U.S. So New England, so we're in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. We're over in Louisville, Kentucky, Ohio, out of the Cincinnati area, South Carolina, as well as Arkansas, Dallas, Texas, where we operate, and in Oklahoma. So those are the 10 states in which we operate. There's not a whole lot of difference in terms of the question comes up quite a bit. Not a whole lot of difference between operating in the U.S. and in Canada. Okay, folks providing the service is the same, clientele is the same, referral sources are the same. The only difference I'd say is the licensure. So in the U.S., there's often a licensure state, meaning that you have to have a home care license. Whereas in Canada, there's not, and I think out of the 50 states in the U.S., I think 32 are licensure states. So we have a combination of both licensure and non-licensure states. That's the biggest difference, other than, of course, the U.S. U.S. dollar versus Canadian dollar. What do we target? So I think we've made, just under 20 acquisitions, I think, over the last few years. So we are an acquisitive company. This is a home care roll-up story. Again, that's how we've been able to go from, basically Canadian dollars, $55,000 US in 2016 to about 37 million last year, right? So we've been buying these companies over the course of the last few years, generally about 4 per year. That's what we were averaging up until about a year ago. We're generally paying anywhere from 3 to 5 times EBITDA, right? Pretty consistently. There's been a couple times we've gone over that, just because there were larger businesses, and those have worked out quite well for us. We're generally looking for a business that's 10 to 15 years old. Okay, historically profitable. This is a succession plan normally. So you've got someone that started the business 10 to 15 years ago. They're looking for an exit. We would look at a private equity type deal, but we haven't come across younger owners that are really looking to scale their business to multiple locations over a vast geography. Most of these are standalone, one office, one small location in a rural area or in a city, and that's what we've been buying pretty consistently. We've been funding these in the past, either through operational cash flows and private placements, debt. And so Bank of Montreal is our lender. We've done vendor takebacks or promissory notes on most of the deals, and we've done earnouts. So any combination of those is typically how we would do a deal. And the types of businesses we're buying, really, they are mom and pop businesses. So these are businesses that could be upwards of $2 million of revenue. So really small, right? And that's the bulk of the industry. Non-franchised, independent. So these are all corporate owned. We don't look for franchise. So 3 ways for us to grow: organic growth, acquisitions, which is what's been leading the way, as well as joint ventures. That's generally how we're going to go going forward. So here's our financial profile. So on the left-hand side is the annual numbers, and on the right-hand side is the quarterly basis. So you'll see that revenues ticked up. We were impacted by COVID. You'll see that up until the end of 2019, we were setting record results for us pretty much on a quarterly basis. We did take a hit during COVID, and we managed pretty well coming out. Last quarter, we had record adjusted EBITDA for us, so the best results in our history. Management team. This is on our website, so I won't flip too much on this. We have our board of directors here, of which I'm one as a founder. Everybody else is independent. Combination of public company experience as well as home care experience. Our cap table, we have one analyst at Echelon's covering us. We have about 86 million shares outstanding, 40% insider ownership. So you often hear the term serial entrepreneurs. We are serial acquirers of our stock in the open market, right? So management, board of directors, we buy our stock in the open market on a pretty regular basis when we're not in blackout. So we've led pretty much all of our private placements. We've funded it pretty much, mostly with internal folks. So that's kind of how we've grown our business over the last few years. Our debt summary. So we're trending right now at about $2 million EBITDA on an annual basis. Okay, in Canadian dollars, that's where we are, trending at about $2 million. And by the end of this year, this is our BMO debt summary, we're predicted to have about 400,000 Canadian, okay, less than $300,000 US in total bank debt. Okay, so quick math is that probably represents, you think of in our industry as a cash flow based business, right? Service based business, generally 3 times EBITDA would be a reasonable amount of debt. We're sitting at about 0.2 times. So we are very much under leveraged, which will bring us to the opportunities that we have as a result of that in a moment. Let's talk. I want to talk perception just for a moment, because I always find this pretty interesting. If we were sitting around a table having a drink, and I said, look, 5.5 years ago, I started this business, and grew it to over 500 people across 10 states and 2 countries, and $37 million of revenue last year. It's trending $2 million of EBITDA. I think most people would say, holy shit, that's a big business. That's a lot accomplished in a long period of time. And when you put it in the context of a publicly traded company, and you look at a stock chart that's gone, probably been cut in half, sitting at 17 cents today, and a market cap of $15 million, $14.5 million, you're like, well, what the hell is wrong with it? Right? That's perspective, right? That's the difference of being a private company versus a public one. This is the exact same business. It's a great little business. It's producing cash flow. We have a great management team. We have great leaders in the U.S. We have an aging demographic. We've demonstrated the ability to find great little businesses, to run them well, to acquire more. But we're very much undervalued, right? And that's the opportunity that I think folks have to get involved in this company, if they so choose. Right? 40% insider ownership. Some people would say that's too much. Right? Some people have told me that's too high as a public company. My reaction to that is we put our money where our mouth is. We keep buying in the open market. We keep contributing to the success of the company. Right? When I started this company, I told everybody we had a 10-year plan. And at year 5, it'd be another 10 years. And that's where we are today. If you look at all the stock charts of Boyd Auto Group or Park Lawn Corporation or Medicis in our industry, the U.S., and you look at all those charts over the last 20 years, the first 0 to 10 years, it looks like they didn't do anything. And what happens at year 8, 9, 10? Everything goes up. It's like that with all the consolidators. No different than us. So we're almost 6 years in from when we started our acquisition program with this tiny little company in Rhode Island in October of 2017. Almost 6 years in, right? Super low market cap, super low stock price. That's the opportunity that I see over the next decade, which I think is significant. So very pleased with the progress we've made to date, and very, very happy to take any questions you may have. Yes. How important is goodwill? So in the context of our company, this is the question: is how important is goodwill? So when we buy businesses, because we don't have any, there's no tangible assets in our business, right? This is a service-based industry. We don't own assisted living or independent living or nursing homes, right? We go into people's homes and provide the service there. So when we acquire a business, it's all intangible assets. I mean, there might be some furniture in an office, but you get my drift, right? We're talking about client lists, non-competes, goodwill, primarily. Those are 3 primary intangible assets. So it might be a trademark or something, right? So we always have goodwill on the balance sheet. How important is it to me? Not important at all. I think it's meaningless. It's not representative of anything. I'm an accountant, right? So, and I can say that I hate goodwill. Like, it's not representative of the cash flow of the business. It's not representative of, other than the fact that you've paid for something that doesn't have tangible assets, so you have to stick it somewhere. So whether it's goodwill, which doesn't amortize every year, or whether it's non-compete or a client list, which does, I don't particularly care. Like, it doesn't. So it's important to the investment community, not important to me. Yeah. Why is the market? So the question is, why is the market so fragmented? Great question. I think the number one reason is there's such a significant market opportunity. So home care, the provision of services to seniors, can happen anywhere. So it can happen in a rural area, or it can happen in a large, urban market, right? But everybody needs it, right? I mean, think of the people that have impacted within your own families or lives, someone that an aunt, uncle, grandfather, parent. Like, there's a lot of people that have a need of home care, right? Dementia being number one. I mean, it's about 75% of our clients have some form of dementia, right? So because it's such a need, it happens a lot, right? And people go create their own business, and that's how you get a lot of home care companies. And that's the opportunity for us. There are thousands of these businesses that in the coming years will be for sale. and so we buy the ones that we think that are good. Are you thinking from a public company space or actually people that we, okay. So on the private pay home care, so non-Medicare, non-Medicaid, as a public company, we're the only ones we can find like us. We're not aware of any other publicly traded companies that are private pay. Yeah, actually in the world, we've checked Australia and Europe and North America. But there are private equity-backed companies that we may compete with on a bid basis, about a handful. And then at a local level, in terms of the services we provide, that's mostly franchise. So, we're in Vancouver, so like Nurse Next Door would be an example of a local one that was started here, right? That would have a U.S. and Canadian presence. Home Instead, the largest in the world, right at home. There's a bunch. That's a local direct service competition. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, how many when we acquire a business, let's say on average $2 million of revenue, how many clients would be acquired as part of that transaction? So, it ranges. It could be anywhere from 50 to 75, as an example. Now, I think this is important. This is a recurring revenue basis. Like that's the nature of the business. So on average, our clients stay with us for 3 years. Okay, but it could be we're providing service to somebody that had a hip or knee surgery, and we're providing 72 hours of coverage in the U.S. before Medicare kicks in, as an example. We have folks that, lost a loved one and they want companionship, right? And so sometimes we do live-in. So someone's living within a home 24/7. Sometimes it's, 20 hours a week. It's all different. But on average, about 50 to 75, about the same for the number of caregivers, roughly. Yeah. Yeah. Cohort analysis, the ones that we've done or ones that competitors, when you say cohort? Yeah, so the question is, have we broken out the results of individual acquisitions within our MD&A or financial statements or any other report? We tend not to do that for competitive reasons. Really, that's the number one driver. So what we do break out are results based on segments. So we have a U.S. operating segment, which is about 80% of our business, and then the Canadian segment, which is really our Nova Scotia-based business. But no, we don't break it out individually and track them every sense. We do it internally, obviously, but not to the public, just for competitive reasons. I like the questions. My favorite part. So keep going. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. The question is, do we ever see ourselves including a virtual element within the business? We're always looking at different aspects of the business to see if it makes sense. I think virtual is a natural one to look at. We don't do it now, but it's certainly something that we are looking at. Yeah. The ticker symbol is NLH. Yeah. .V. Question, yeah. That naturally requires a lot of management of those smaller. How is that? How are you addressing that? Yeah, great question. So the comment is that we have a bunch of different regions in which we operate, and there's obviously management capacity that comes into play, and how do we sort of treat that? And so there's in the past, when we started with like nothing, we just kind of were adding. We were looking for really good businesses, but we're trying to get density. So in the regions we operate, we are trying to go deeper in those areas, and it is due to the management constraint. So we have regional directors. So we have a regional director that covers South Central U.S., one with the Midwest, and then also the New England. So that's how we break it down. So because we have those regional, and one in Nova Scotia. So because we have the regional directors, we're trying to give them basically more agencies to operate, as opposed to going to, like California or something where we don't already have the management presence. So that's definitely our preferred method, is going deeper in the areas because we already have the management capacity. That answer your question?
The acquisition how do you identify those
Yeah, so the question is how do we identify opportunities to acquire businesses, right? What's the M&A strategy? So there's a few different ways. One is because we buy a lot of these home care businesses, and we're one of the more predominant acquirers of home care businesses in the U.S. on a private pay basis. The brokers come to us, and we get opportunities every week, right? So that's one way. Two, we go to a couple of home care conferences similar like this, just industry based, and we all, those conversations always lead to opportunities. The owners we purchased businesses from in the past, I think most of them had a pretty good result with us, and so they talk to their peer group. And we also have a direct outreach program, and so we regularly contact business owners in the areas in which we operate, and a lot of it's just about timing, right? You kind of hit them at a time when it's right, and it leads to an opportunity. I mean, this is why people sell businesses in general. One, they're dead. Two, they have a health issue, right? Three, they're tired. Or four, you make them a compelling offer. That's it, right? Like everybody's going to sell their business. Like they don't have a choice, right? They might pass it down to the next generation, maybe small percentage of that these days, right? But they're going to sell. Like we know that. So we just reach out and we ask them, right? And if the time's right, often it is. And if it's not, we come back. That's it. It's really, really simple. So really easy business to understand. We complex issues within the home, like a lot of family dynamics. But it's just a really easy business to understand. We all understand the aging demographic, like we all do, right? We get that, and we understand the services that we provide in the home. They're not complicated services in terms of understanding like activities of daily living. We understand that people are going to sell their businesses over time. We're a good buyer, right? We understand the multiple arbitrage you can get as a publicly traded company when you're buying 3.5 to 5 times, right, from an investment perspective. So, that's the business in a nutshell, right? Paul, I don't think Paul Andreola is here, but plug for him in Small Cap Discoveries. He wrote an article in 2018, I think he referred to this morning. They love boring businesses. Well, we're a pretty boring business, right? I mean, it's an exciting investment opportunity, but it's a pretty boring business, right? I'm a CPA, right? How boring is that? Boring business run by a boring guy. I mean, it can get better, right? Anyway. Yeah, go ahead. Have we had any labor supply issues? Yeah, we certainly did during COVID. So when we showed the dip in the financial graph during COVID, is because we had less access to people, right? And I think if you were to ask me that question 10 years from now, it would be our number one issue. I don't think we'll ever be in a position where I say, we don't need anybody, right? Like our growth is a function of the people that we get to provide the care. It's much better today than it was a year ago, which is why we're coming off record results. We have access to more people. Yeah, much better today than it was a year ago. Yeah, great question. Yeah.
See like a declining trend or people going into the industry from a labor perspective?
So the question again, is there a declining number of people coming into industry that's providing the service? I think just like we're providing care to an aging demographic, the stats show that there's going to be less people to provide the service over time, right? Unless immigration increases, then that's the reality that we're dealing with. Which goes back to the gentleman's question earlier on about, can we look at some virtual models and things like that that will help shift it a little bit, right? Hamed talked about AI in a previous session, so there's applications in our industry. So yeah, I think it's always going to be I think it's going to be an issue similar to the question just before that. Yeah, the question is, with an increased immigration coming in Canada, people that basically have a healthcare background but can't necessarily work in Canada for which they were trained for, does that help us? It does in some capacity. Some of our best performing caregivers have been people that have been physicians in other countries and they can't get certified here. I mean, they're amazing people, like amazing providers of care, right? And sometimes we're a stopgap until they get certain amounts of time and have to take additional training here. It's a bit of a crazy situation, but they are some of our best providers of care for sure. Yeah. Time for one more question? Or not? All right. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Yeah.